doing a search on, ways to market a book, and you come across an ad or something that says, run Google ads, or an old blog that says, I ran Google ads and made this much money. You need to understand, first of all, date. Look, when was that written? But also, second,
Yeah, when was that published?
yeah. Well, welcome to this episode of Pros Talking Prose with the lovely, fabulous, wonderful Troy Lambert and the not so weird and mediocre Stacey. We are so happy to be here with you and discuss the wonderful world of marketing, which is like always and forever the what is it, the bane of every
Oh
author's
no, it's the author
existence.
favorite. Every
It's
author just loves to talk
yeah,
about marketing.
I'm sure they
Yeah,
do. If they
it's their
if they
it's their
say that,
favorite.
they're lying, because
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, because I
Now
haven't met one.
there are authors that do like marketing, but I think the difference is that they have found marketing that they like
Yeah.
rather than, and I think that'll be part of our discussion today is talking when we're talking about Kickstarter and very unconventional approaches.
Hmm.
What we're talking about is instead finding ways of marketing your work and reaching readers that work for you, that you like.
Exactly.
Because you might be someone who loves to do big launches, but you hate that maintenance of like trying to maintain your backlist and let everybody,
Yeah.
trying to do that type of thing. And unless you find a way to make that fresh, I mean, people have made their careers off of Kickstarter.
Yep.
It's possible. That's a challenge, but it's possible to make your career or make a large part of your money off Kickstarter. So,
Yep. Yep.
anyway.
So
But yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah.
yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about marketing and how it applies to the author business. So first and foremost, I have to kind of preface this with, I don't know much about Kickstarter, so this is going to be kind of like my like a tutorial for me as well, because it's not something I've kind of done a deep dive on, but it is something that I'm very aware of a lot of authors have used and utilized successfully and unsuccessfully in their author journeys. I will say this, as an author business coach, this is all the, anytime I approach this subject of marketing, it is an interesting array of emotions that kind of like pass before an author's eyes. Like there's this trepidation, fear, anxiety, terror, and then sometimes even sleep that comes over the faces. They're like,
Or
oh.
or anger.
Or
There's
anger. Yeah,
sometimes
there's
anger.
another
If
one.
you have tried certain marketing approaches and they have not worked for you, somebody will mention that particular approach as being the answer, and you will tense up like a tiger
You'll be
about
like,
to
yeah, right,
attack
that doesn't
someone.
work for me. That's not real.
You'd be like,
I've
that
heard
doesn't work
so
for me,
many
or I've wasted
people.
so much money on Facebook or so much money on
Right.
Amazon. And anyway, we'll
Yeah,
talk about that too as
we'll
we go
talk
through
about that a
this.
little
But
bit.
as
Yeah.
far as specifics, but part of it is we don't want to get too much into the weeds because the reason is every marketing approach is different and every different things work for different books and different authors. And so for anyone, I'll just offer this before we even get started. Anyone that says every author should do or has to do this thing is wrong
No.
immediately. Okay,
No.
immediately. There is no one answer for everyone. I have a friend of mine who's an author who got his Facebook account got shut down,
Mm.
and it just he got kicked off of Facebook, right? And then magically now he's back on. But anyway, and we don't nobody knows why.
Nobody
It's
knows.
just the Facebook universe, right?
Yeah.
And the weird things that happen there. But his being gone from Facebook impacted his sales by exactly zero. It made absolutely no difference in his book sales at all. None. So
Yeah.
when you say, everybody says, you have to be on Facebook, you have to be on this social media platform, that social media platform, those things may be helpful for you. They may be helpful for some authors, but to say that they're essential is foolish, absolutely foolish. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why you're buffering quite a bit today. It could be my internet. I'm not sure. Hopefully it doesn't show up in the feed.
Hopefully
But
it's
if
not
people see that,
me.
don't worry about it. We can still hear Troy very well, but I just wanted to make sure. Um, so
Hmm.
okay, here's the other thing I need to share about marketing. And it's very much in line with what you just said, Troy, which is that marketing is a very there's too many factors for there to be a cookie cutter scenario in which you can employ as an author and just plug and play. It doesn't work that way. So just, and this is kind of what I teach when it comes to publishing in general, is just there's no plug and play. It's not like this is the way it works for everybody, and so you should do it this way, because it really just doesn't work that way. It's per project, per person, per personality type, per tolerance, per budget. There's just too many things. So when we're talking about budgeting for a marketing type strategy that you can and in your scenario should employ, keep in mind that there's all those things that you should factor in before you make a decision on what works for you. Now, if you need some help and tutorial and personal one-on-one kind of coaching on that strategy, you're certainly welcome to get a hold of Troy or myself, or even one of the other many professionals out there that are kind of specializing in this area, so that they can help you do that. And we can give you some vetted professionals that we recommend as well, because like I said, and I'll say this often, there's a lot of people out there that are shysters, shenanigans, that pull shenanigans, and they have really crappy companies that are just there to take money from authors. And that is number one, not our priority. I need you to understand that about Troy and I. We understand we'll probably die broke in this world, because we love making sure that authors have the information that they need. And we'd love to keep ourselves fed in the process, but in the meantime, we're going to make sure you get the right information. So that being said, marketing, when you're marketing is a long-term game. Marketing, the word marketing is very general, and I liken it to my husband asking me, what do you want for dinner, and me answering food. That's marketing. It's very broad. It doesn't have any specific focus. It's not really like, this is what you do, this is, run this ad campaign, use this strategy, employ this, this social media platform. It's none of that. What marketing is just the general focus on getting eyes on your product or on your brand. Okay, so when you're marketing, that can range from all the way from sitting next to the guy on the airplane on the way to a trip and telling him, hey, yeah, I got a book. That's marketing, all the way to having a banner on the moving walkway in the airport. Like, there's different things that you can do to market your book. And then there are ad campaigns, and campaigns are short bursts, usually with a goal in mind. You want to make sure that you're very focused on your analytics and your budget and your campaign focus, which is to target a specific audience type. Okay, so that's what campaigns do. And so when we talk about Kickstarter or any other marketing strategy in the future, understand and know that when you're doing those types of things and employing those types of strategies, you are specifically targeting a specific group of readers that you might want to attract to your book. Okay, so with Kickstarter, there's a couple things I'm going to just kind of like throw out there, and you can dispel like my butterflies and like I have like butterflies and unicorns about Kickstarter. Are you ready? One
Yeah,
is, I
sure.
think it's awesome because I feel like it's one of those situations where you can offer these really fun, nuanced, specialized tiers to your readers that adopt your Kickstarter, like get involved with your Kickstarter, and they buy into your plan, and they're going to get like certain kickbacks for being part of that. So I almost liken it to like being like the super fan who like followed Samwise Gamgee to the FanX, and like got his like autographed autographed poster because I did that extra step. I took that extra step. And I feel like that's kind of what Kickstarter does. It kind of gives you that access to something that wouldn't normally be available to you. And is that kind of how Kickstarter kind of like puts itself out there, or how
Yeah,
why and how
yeah, I
would you
mean,
use Kickstarter?
that's kind of the premise
Okay.
of Kickstarter, is that you're offering something unique
Hmm.
to the people who back your Kickstarter. Well, hopefully something unique, something ahead of time before anyone else can get it. Or sometimes you're just offering them the opportunity to support a project that they really like. So
Hmm.
there's all kinds of things that happen on Kickstarter, from games to keyboards to all kinds of electronic gadgets to books to series to audiobooks to all kinds of different things that people use Kickstarter for. And essentially what it is it's a creator raising money to support the various things that they may want to do. And a lot of times that involves things like limited editions, like things that you wouldn't normally get someplace else. So, like for instance, the Kickstarter that we're doing now, which I'll use to talk about throughout this, is one of the things that we're doing is the cover of the book for Kickstarter is the only place you can get that cover. When we release the book later and it's published later, it'll have a completely different cover. And the reason is, then if you have that Kickstarter exclusive, and if you can track down all of us authors and get us to all sign it, you'll have a truly unique piece that the only way you can get that piece is to get it through Kickstarter. It's not going to be available anywhere else or any other way. So there's going to be some unique stuff like that that you offer through Kickstarter that really is for people that are a fan of either your type of fiction or your particular book or one of the authors or whatever the case may be. And they want something that's unique, that is different than what somebody else is going to have on their shelf. So it's speaking to a different audience than your audience that goes to Amazon and buys an ebook, right? Because that's not the same audience. The person who's supporting our Kickstarter is not the same person who's going to do that. So,
So who would you recommend Kickstarter for? What would be the purpose then for the author to employ this kind of marketing strategy? What is your guys' purpose for using Kickstarter?
so one of it is so anthologies. If you don't know, if you've ever been part of an anthology, so what we've got, let me first explain what we're doing so that it kind of gives you some context. So we've got an anthology that's called True Pulp. It's a bunch of noir authors getting together. We've put together a whole bunch of stories. What's kind of unique about this one, along with some of the other perks that we have with it, is that finding all of these authors in a single book in a single place is not something you're usually going to find. Like we have a pretty wide variety of authors. A lot of them are pretty well known. So it's something like you're going to find a unique story from that person that you're not going to find somewhere else, and it's going to be in this anthology, and with a unique cover, that type of thing. But one of the reasons we're doing it is anthologies don't make authors a lot of money. So if you've ever been a part of an anthology, if you've got 12 to 13 authors involved in an anthology, and I'm not talking about like a duology like Kristen Lamb and I did, where we both put a bunch of stories together, and there's only two authors. In this case, there's 12, 13 different authors and all different stories. Well, by the time you split up royalty between 12 and 13 authors, you're not making a lot of money. I mean, that's just, you don't usually make a lot of money off anthologies, but they can be a springboard, give you some exposure to new audiences. They can get you awards. We're submitting a lot of the stories for Derringer Awards and International Thriller Writers Awards, things like that. So you can get awards by being a part of an anthology and stuff like that, but you're not going to make a lot of money. However, if we can have a really successful Kickstarter campaign, it's almost like getting an advance for the authors on an anthology. You make money, like real money, off of the anthology launch with Kickstarter, and then you make royalties too later on.
Mm,
And as a result of the Kickstarter, you've gotten publicity where now the anthology is a little more well known. We don't have to
right.
get as much traction. We've already got some traction by starting with Kickstarter. So part of the reason we're doing it is so we can pay authors. Authors need to make money, and this is one of the ways we can pay authors ahead of time without taking a huge gamble with our own money on an anthology, which is what it would be if we paid anybody in advance on an anthology ever. So we just, instead of doing that, we run a Kickstarter instead. So that's part of the reason. Another reason is to reach a new audience. Um, the audience on Kickstarter, again, is different than your audience on Amazon or other book platforms. And one of the things that's unusual about our particular anthology is that pulp is kind of making a comeback. Pulp and
Mm-hmm.
noir type fiction is kind of making a comeback. And part of it is because we've gotten the pendulum has swung too far in some areas to having very sanitized, very careful fiction that isn't just raw and hard hitting and hard punching and, offensive to someone probably, but it doesn't really matter. We've kind of sanitized fiction to a point where I've got to have a sensitivity reader if I have someone that's not like me in my book and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying those things are bad necessarily or that we shouldn't do them in some cases, but there are some cases where we just want a story that's just real people doing real things in real circumstances, and just let it be a little more raw, a little bit bolder, a little bit more edgy. And that's really what noir is kind of all about. And so there's a market for that type of fiction. It's kind of making a comeback. But the old pulps were really disposable. That was kind of their whole thing was, it's made on cheap paper. You read it once, you throw it away or put it in the recycle bin, whatever, it goes back, it gets pulped again and turned into another book. And your shelf life for those things was, you know, a few weeks, maybe 6, 8 weeks on a spinner rack. And that was all the attention your book got. You didn't get an advance, you didn't get anything else. You just made money on these cheap little what we called pulps. And there were magazines that published that pulp stuff as well. Well, the difference is today we have print on demand and we have digital publishing. So we're creating what we call pulp with legacy. This pulp can hang around forever. Okay. And the way we're starting that is obviously we start with Kickstarter and we start with some really cool limited editions and some hardcovers and things like that, which you would never see of pulp in the past because it wasn't possible. But now with today's print on demand and marketing and stuff like that, it is possible. So we're taking things a different. So this is why we're doing our particular Kickstarter. Now, why reasons for Kickstarters? There are a million reasons for Kickstarters. You want to do a limited edition. You want to do a hardcover. You want to raise money to pay for doing an audiobook. Well, then you make an audiobook one of your stretch goals and have that stretch goal be enough that you could produce the audiobook if you want to. You can produce the audiobook without paying for it out of pocket yourself in order to produce the book. So there's all kinds of different things you can use Kickstarter for as an author and a publisher. And this is just ours is just one of them, but there are other things you can do as well.
I
Even just
had
to put some cash in your pocket to give yourself your own advance.
Yeah, and I had one client, she ended up using it to pay for her illustrator. She was doing excuse me, a
Hmm.
children's book. And children's books, by the way, if you're doing a children's book, children's picture book, you are spending money because illustrators are not cheap,
Hmm.
and you do not want to have an AI illustrator on a children's book. They're getting,
Oh,
if you have an AI illustrator, you're getting
no.
slaughtered in the business. So you're wise to hire an actual illustrator artist. And this guy, he's amazing. He's actually, I just signed another author 2 days ago, and she's using the same author or the same illustrator for her book, and it's just, I'm so excited. But yeah, I know he's not cheap, but he's an amazing artist. And she did a Kickstarter to pay for her illustrations, and it was successful. She did a good job, and she got that thing published, and she hit her goals, and it was great. But yeah, she did lots of different things. I think she even had like a plushie or something that she gave away in her Kickstarter. So it was really kind of fun. So you can use
Hmm.
your Kickstarter to do all kinds of fun things and to fund different reasons and different projects and different, goals that you might have for your author business. It doesn't necessarily always have to be about the book. It can be about other things that you want to do as you fund your author career. But yeah, I can see using Kickstarter for a lot of purposes. I have another author that's using it to, he wants to launch murder mystery games that he's trying to mass produce, and he does these
Hmm.
murder mystery games, and they're really good. So it's just a lot of fun to just do these for different reasons. But Kickstarters are awesome for that. I know that for
Hmm.
raising money for projects. So I guess my next question then for you, Troy, is like, okay, if an author wanted to do this, what would be the first thing that you would recommend that they do if they're considering an author, or if they're considering a Kickstarter for any reason? Like what should an author do first? Like Do they need to sit down and figure out like goals? Should
Mm,
they like who would we recommend
and
for
no,
like learning about these things a little bit in detail?
well, that's really my first advice is to get some education, and there are
Hmm.
tons of ways to learn things. So this, and the second part of that is that you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
Like there are
Hmm.
people that have done it before or examples that you can look at to help you. And this is what happened to me this weekend. I had a guy look over our Kickstarter and he went, "Hey, here's some things you need to do. Here's some things you need to edit." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't edited that yet, and stuff like that," which is fine because we've got some time before our Kickstarter launches. But
Nice.
that was a good thing for him to say, "Hey, you need to reevaluate at least your initial goal because this is what happens once you fund and things like that. Kickstarter helps you and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to get, if you want to get your project noticed in that way, this is something that you want to do." And I was like, "Oh, hadn't thought about that. Had no idea." But this is a guy who's run 50 some Kickstarters in the last 10 years, all of them successful. Um,
Hmm.
and so you can get help from someone like that to help you look at your Kickstarter. But that's really like almost down the road because initially what you need to do is understand how Kickstarter works and how things get funded and what gets funded on Kickstarter. So a big part of that is just do some research. Russell Nothby has a great book on Kickstarter. There's another gal that has a course that's a little more even nuts and bolts. I can't remember what her name is,
We'll
but it's a
find
little
it.
more
We'll find it and
hands-on.
we'll put them in the
Yep.
description. So we'll put
We'll
these in the
find it and put the
description.
links in the description. But there's a basically the place I started was Russell Nothby's Get Your Book Selling on Kickstarter. It's a great little book that just gives you an idea of what the heck is Kickstarter, how do you set goals, what do you want to do, and people have done this at all levels. There are people who have done this for their very first book and run
Mm.
Kickstarter for their very first book and been successful. There was a guy that ran it with one book. Like in this case, we've got a bunch of books and things that we can run ours with as bonuses and things like that. But there was a guy that ran it with one book, and basically every tier, every stretch goal he got, the books got nicer for everyone.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah,
he
that's a good
just
idea.
all the books got gilded edges,
Gilded
and all the books
pages
got
and
extra
mhm.
illustrations, and then they got overlays on the cover and everything, every step, and his final step was a big audiobook, and it was a big epic fantasy, so it's a huge audiobook project, things like
Those
that.
epic fantasies,
So
man.
there's, yeah, I mean, those things are, first of all, those things are expensive
Massive.
to produce. So
Yes, they are.
doing that kind of thing through Kickstarter is great. So I've seen everything get funded from small little projects with a single book to, Brandon Sanderson and 40 some $1 million and, getting a warehouse and sending out thousands and thousands of books and things like that. But
Hmm.
one of the things I learned this weekend is that about 65% of projects do not fund,
Ooh, wow. Okay, that's a lot.
which is a large number. But the
Yeah.
reason is, and this is part of what I learned, the reason is partly the construction of your campaign and how you have your campaign set up. Also, unrealistic goals for your base goal of getting funded. Because if you can get funded within the first 24 hours or first couple of days, then Kickstarter kind of gives you a boost because, hey, you met your goal. And then you get more advertising and marketing from them. If you don't meet your goal, then, or it takes you 10 days, you're running a 30-day campaign, and it takes you 10 to 15 days to fund your initial goal, then you have that much less time on the back end to promote stretch goals and other things like that.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so you start low with your initial base asking, even if you know, like, hey, that's going to make actually making this viable at all really tight, because as soon as you pass that funding threshold, that's when you get assistance from Kickstarter and their algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay.
and in this particular, and the other part is that they're not marketed. Like in our particular case, we've got 12 authors, we've got over a dozen authors who all have massive followings.
See, and
So
that's what
we
I was going
have,
to ask you. So, when an author comes in here and they're starting from scratch, what do they need to use in conjunction with the Kickstarter campaign to make sure people even find it or know it's happening? Like, don't they still have to run some
so
ads as well to kind of like get the word out?
it would be smart to run some ads or do it in cooperation, do your Kickstarter in cooperation with someone else. So you can
Yeah.
offer some kind of a book bundle as a stretch goal, or Do it with maybe your narrator has a big audience or something like that. Or, I mean, quite simply, then set your goals very low. Maybe
Right.
your goal for your first Kickstarter is $250
Hmm.
because all you need is a few of your decent fans, 10 fans who will pay $25
Right.
to support your work to get you funded. So just start extremely low and understand that the more people that you reach with your Kickstarter, the more people, the more that can grow and you can do extra things. But just start with realistic expectations. If you only have an email list of 500 people, it's going to be really, really challenging for you to meet a $2,500 funding goal, for example.
Right.
Or it's going to
Right.
take you a really long time to make that goal,
Because
right?
what you're
Unless you've got
doing,
some
I mean, like, just for clarification, but because what you're doing is you're actually taking that Kickstarter campaign and you're sending it out to your email list and to your social medias
social
to kind of like,
media,
yeah.
your
So
email
you still
list.
have to, you're not growing an audience on Kickstarter. Really, what you're trying to do is get your audience to tell other people about it, but also do it with this, incentive to do that.
Mhm.
So it's
Well, and
really,
eventually you do. Kickstarter has their own audience. So eventually you can build your own audience on Kickstarter, but that's
can
probably
you?
not going to happen on your first project. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
People will just follow you as a creator and follow all the projects that you create.
Oh,
So
okay.
eventually you can gather a following on Kickstarter the same as you gather a following anywhere else. Now, part of the key to that is to get these people on your email list if you at all possibly can. Again, like we always talk about building your career on rented land. Kickstarter is owned by Kickstarter.
Right.
They give you
So,
some information about the people that buy your stuff, that back your
okay.
project and things like that, because you
Do you
have
get
to email
emails?
those people. You have to send them your stuff. So yes, you do.
Okay,
They
that's
still
good.
have to opt in to be on your list,
Right, right,
but
right.
that is a very easy part of the process
Okay.
of Kickstarter, and people are used to that of just opting into your list when they download a reward or something like that.
Okay.
So it's not too challenging to do, but you still need them to opt in. You have to abide by the rules and by the law. You can't just throw people
Yeah.
on your email list.
Don't
So,
break
but
rules in
it's
this
easy to
category
integrate that as
anyway.
part of your marketing thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you can get their email addresses, and then also, like I say, they can follow you on Kickstarter, but just make sure that if at all possible, you bring them over into your universe as well. Now, truthfully, though, a lot of people that back Kickstarters, that's the way they get books, that's the way they get games, that's the way they get whatever it is that they're getting. And so they're unlikely to become your buyer somewhere else. They can,
Right.
but it's just not too likely. In this case, maybe somebody wants to own the Kickstarter trade paperback with the unique cover, and then they want to own the regular trade paperback as well, and they'll buy both. Real enthusiastic fan or something like that. True, could happen, but more than likely, those are two different audiences, and you just need to treat them that way. But that's
Yeah.
two different things. So if you're
Yeah.
running Facebook ads or something like that, you're going to run them to people that are interested in Kickstarter just as your starting point because otherwise, books and Kickstarter, otherwise, if they're not interested in those two things, that's not your audience, you
Right.
know.
Exactly.
And, Facebook AI is good at figuring that out to an extent, but it's
Mm.
also not always great at it. So
Yep.
you just have to understand what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess, yeah, then number one, you're getting your education. Number two, don't be afraid to ask pros about, how to make this work,
mhm.
and then recognize and realize what the goal of it is and be very realistic about it. Don't think you're going to get a 2.5 million dollar Kickstarter campaign off the ground when maybe your first try. That's probably not going to happen. And again, the book market,
Yeah.
that is a tough sell. That is a tough sell when you're trying to go big numbers like that. I hate to break it to you
Hmm.
if you don't know this. If you're new to this channel, if you're new to this podcast, just understand Troy and I come from years of experience in the business. Combined, I think oh my gosh, it's kind of scary to think about this, but I think combined we're about 50 years. That's kind of scary. I think that's scary.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's kind of scary. But anyway,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of terrifying. But I should say that the reason we started this channel in the first place is because he and I um it's funny. We were part of an editors and writers group, and we would get together every month and have lunch with these. It was like a bunch of hens in a hen house, and I think you were one of two poor
Yeah.
suckers who got roped into this woman club. And anyway, Troy and I hit it off because we were very irreverent. But one of the things that a lot of people were, we would have these conversations after, after hours or, whatever, on other times. And I think it was one time we were sitting there, somebody said, "Oh my gosh, I would love to be the fly on the wall when you two are talking." And that's kind of what happened. Is that's why we started this YouTube channel, or this YouTube channel slash podcast. But you should know that, like, when we come together and we're talking about these topics, we are, one, speaking from experience, but two, we also have a team of professionals that we usually keep in our Rolodex. And for those youngsters that might be listening, a Rolodex used to sit on your desk, and it was where you would put phone numbers.
And business cards and things like that. Well, yeah.
And
So let me
I
And
loved
let
my
me just add
Rolodex.
to that is to say that the other part of that professional advice is be sure you're open to listening to it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Like,
exactly.
I could have just this guy could have looked at my Kickstarter and ripped it apart. And I could have just
Yeah,
taken offense and said, "Hey, man, I'm going
yeah.
to
What
do
do
it
you
my way.
know?
I know what I'm doing. What do you know?" But the truth is, he does know what he's doing. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I need to listen to his advice and take it for what it is. He's a
Exactly.
part of this anthology. He wants this Kickstarter to be successful as much as
Oh,
everybody
see,
else
there
wants
you
it to be
go. Yeah,
successful,
yeah, yeah,
right?
for sure.
And
Yeah.
so he's not going to give me bad advice.
No.
And it might be painful at first to go, "Oh man, I can't believe I missed that," or "Oh, I can't believe I messed that up." But instead of dwelling on that, the next thing is to just fix it,
Well,
right?
and
Is to just go in and listen to the advice and going, "How badly do I want this campaign to be successful?"
yeah,
And
I
when
I
I
think
say that, then I say, well, I want it to be a successful really badly. And I look at his last campaign where he did some of the things that he's telling me to do,
right.
and it funded at over $10,000. And I'm like, I would love for
That's
this to be well
pretty
beyond $10,000,
good.
right?
Yeah.
I would love for this to be that kind of success and more. And that was with one author and one author's books. Now, if we have 12 authors and we're all promoting it, well, then we've got a much higher chance of like getting this thing to really skyrocket, right?
Yeah.
So, but we still need to have everything set up so that when people land on the Kickstarter page, they really want to back it. They really want to support this project. So we still have to do things correctly. Having a bunch
Right.
of big names in an anthology is not your answer. Your answer is to do things correctly and do things a
Right.
way that we know that this project is going to fund. So that's just part of it is when you have that network, listen to those people. They know what they're
Mm-hmm.
talking about. And unless they're a total scam artist, they really do want you to be successful.
Yeah, and
Like
that's
we're
the other
not,
thing I was going
you
to
know,
say. People are really not,
oh,
I kind of noticed this about people at a certain level of professionalism, is that at some point you realize, wait, I'm not in competition with these people. Like, these people are my comrades. These are not my competition. Like, when you guys are targeting, when you're targeting an audience and you feel like somebody else's book is, this is the comparison thing that you authors all do, and it's horrible.
mhm.
I do it myself in business. I'm always going, well, I wish I could be more like that, or I want to be like that. We all do that, but one of the things that we need to do at a certain point is kind of check in with ourselves and realize, wait a minute, I'm not in competition with those people. There's plenty of people out there that, if they don't need me, then they need somebody, and maybe that somebody is that person, and it would be better that he and I, or she and I, are on the same page so that we can help each other. And like you said, go in with these collabs and doing book bundles and things like that. It's a good way for you to build your network and not try to pit yourself as this lone character in the middle of the ocean trying to sell books and peddle your books to the four, the, what is it, like, I think it's like $3.7 billion industry that's out there. You're not going to be even get close to chipping into that business, without your network, without growing. And that's kind of the power behind publishers, just as you Want to know a secret? The secret is that publishers, the reason that they put out successful authors is not necessarily because, they're like, it's because they have loud mouths on their team and they have a network of professionals that they're friends with Oprah, like they're friends with other editor
Hmm.
networks. They're friends with people at New York Times. They're friends with these people. So they're friends, meaning they're friends, but they're friends with these people and they network and they collab with these people to get their and promote their books. So when you're a lone self-published little author and you're trying to do this, you have to create your network so that people are willing to collab and get your name out there. And Kickstarter, like doing things like this where you're collabing with other authors, I think would probably make so many more authors more successful, because you can like say, hey, I'm right now I'm partnering with like, Sarah Eden, and we're going to do a romance package, and you could do that. It's just whatever you want to do, but that's
Hmm.
something to consider when you're building these campaigns. Is don't try to do it by yourself if you think you can create bigger networks of things going on. So I love that you're
Hmm.
doing that. I think that's a really cool way to
Well,
employ this.
yeah, and it's just like your first book may not be as profitable as you would like it to be. Your very first
Mm-hmm.
book is a learning lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Your very first Kickstarter, or your very first anything you do may very well be a lesson. And that
Mm-hmm.
lesson might come with failure.
Mm-hmm.
It might. You might not fund. You might not, you might not sell enough things. You might not make it, whatever the case may be. Okay, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then learn from that and move forward, but understand that that's just a lesson. So go into things with realistic expectations. Kickstarter is not a magic bullet. Brandon Sanderson did great with Kickstarter. Does that mean
Mm-hmm.
everybody will? No. There are some
Right.
books that do amazing things on Book Talk and other books that do not.
Right.
Okay? So maybe your book is going to take off there. Maybe it won't. I don't
Right.
know. Nobody knows. So you can follow formulas, you can do all that kind of stuff, but just go into things with your eyes wide open. Understand that this is where we are as far as with the world, with publishing, the way things are right now, and go in with your eyes wide open, your expectations set to being something that you can realistically accomplish. And again, going in with people
Is
is
a good
always
idea.
amazing.
It's a good idea. And it's always fun. It makes it a lot more fun, doesn't it, Troy?
Hmm.
It makes it a
Oh yeah,
lot more
well,
fun.
like back in the day, we used to put together book bundles, and it was one way where you would get on bestseller lists. Is you would put
Mm-hmm.
together a book bundle, and then you would put it on sale for like 99 cents. And in that case, nobody's making any money.
Right.
You've
You're
got,
not making money with
10 or
that. Mm-hmm.
12 books by a bunch of authors, but you put it in as like a big box set or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? And it's like your first in series or something that gets people into your writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you put it in with a bunch of other authors, you put it on sale for 99 cents, you get a BookBub deal if you can get one of those, whatever the case may be, and boom, instantly every author that's in that anthology or in that book set is a USA Today bestselling author. Right?
Right.
Because that book went that far to the charts. Now, if you divided that by 10, nobody was a USA Today bestselling author, but it
Right.
doesn't matter because that was part of the game, right? But it was also fun. You throw your book in with somebody else's, you get to read their books. Their book's kind of cool. You get to read some cool stories, some
Mm-hmm.
cool thing like this anthology, man. You guys don't want to miss this anthology. There are some cool stories in this anthology, right? Some stories you're
Right.
not going to find anywhere else. And some of them are related to other series or whatever the case may be, but there's just some really awesome stories, right? But so you get the opportunity, though, as the author who's collaborating with these people to see those stories, to be a part of that when before anybody else is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I mean, it's an opportunity that you should take when you get an opportunity to collaborate with somebody else. So,
It's kind of a novelty. And that's kind of what you're trying to do, is create the buzz, right? Create the excitement about your
mhm.
project. And that's what this does. So that's a fun way to get excited about what you're doing and get other people excited about what you're doing. So I love that. I love that a whole idea about this particular type of campaign. It's kind of a fun thing to get
Oh
involved
yeah.
with, and yeah, kind of play out and see what happens. But one thing I do think we should leave everybody with again is that reiteration about marketing being a kind of long game, and then understanding again that you could try and fail and it's okay. One of the things that I think a lot of people feel like when they get into this business is, oh, I tried this thing because this successful author did this and it didn't work for me. And so I must be a failure, and they give up. And I don't want people to do that. Like, you need to understand that,
Mm-mm.
again, this is very personal, and things and market trends and campaign strategies and everything kind of shifts. I mean, it used to be that, you could run Google ads for super cheap, and, get in there and you like, we're running ads like crazy with Google ads, but then Google kind of did their little bring, and then that stopped. So now Google ads is not the way to do it. But if you go on the internet and you're, doing a search on, ways to market a book, and you come across an ad or something that says, run Google ads, or an old blog that says, I ran Google ads and made this much money, you need to understand, first of all, date. Look, when was that written? But also, second,
Yeah, when was that published?
yeah. But second, you probably, I mean, this really depends on you. And like Troy said, that might not always be right for you. I don't like sour candy, and my son loves sour candy. Does that mean sour candy is bad? No, it just means it's not right for me. So pick something that is right for
Hmm.
you. Pick something that fits your world and your goals and your personality and what you think you can handle and what your spouse won't divorce you over.
Hmm. Well, and I'll just throw in a couple commercials and we can probably drop links to them in the
Yeah, let's do it.
description. But one
Yeah.
of them is Author Ecosystems, which was developed by Russell Nothby and Monica
Right.
Leonel. Um, Amazing thing that helps you by your personality type figure out which kind of marketing actually works best for you and which
Right.
one you resonate with. Now, that's not a perfect system. Monica's actually working on a more even in-depth system.
Oh,
But
that's
things
exciting.
like knowing your personality type, knowing your
Mhm.
Enneagram type,
That's Claire.
Claire Taylor's Reclaim Your Author Career or Sustain Your Author Career, either one of
Mhm.
them. And even if you're just starting out, just call it Claim Your Author Career and still read the same book, right?
Mhm.
But the primary thing there is knowing who you are as a person, knowing your personality type, and by knowing that, then you can make decisions on how to do marketing that actually resonates with you and that you can stand to do, that you can handle
Right.
doing,
We should
right?
bring Claire
And
on
that's
here, by the
really,
way.
really important. We should bring Claire on here because it's really, really this kind of stuff is really important. Follow Becca
Mhm.
Syme. Question the
Phyllis
premise.
Becca
When
Syme.
somebody
Mhm.
tells you you have to do something, then I mean, really look at that and say, "Oh, do I have to do that thing?" Because the answer most of the time is I don't have to, but I may want to. That may
Mhm.
resonate with me, and that may work with my books and my genre, whatever that case may be. But really, this is about finding out what works for you. Your marketing, the marketing that you can do and that makes the most sense for you is the one that
Mhm.
resonates with your personality type and that you can feel comfortable doing. Then marketing doesn't have to feel yucky. It doesn't have to feel horrible. And it can be
Right.
something that you actually really enjoy. So,
Yeah. I love that you brought up Becca. She hit me hard in the heart last time we saw her. And Claire's amazing. Um, Sorry, everybody. My husband's asking me for a pen. Rude. In the middle of my podcast of all times. Anyway, so talk about divorce.
oh, yeah, I'm sure that's grounds right
Yeah,
there.
it's grounds right there. Anyway, yeah, so I love that we're doing this. We should talk about other, advertising type um strategies that people can employ, like Brian Cohen's, he's the king of Amazon ads. Bringing Brian on here, I'm Brian, I would probably has his own podcast, Brian Cohen, but he's an amazing guy if you
He
want to learn
does.
how to do Amazon ads or anything related to that kind of strategy.
Yeah.
Again, this is
Book
book
blurbs and
blurbs.
Amazon ads. That kind
Yeah,
is
book
the,
blurbs,
yeah.
the king. Yeah, just remember that. Did it print? Yeah. Okay. Oh, for the love of Pete. Sorry, everybody. I'm gonna have to have Sydney like blurp this out. Apparently, just as a side note, my husband and I, is this about our no, this isn't. I thought this was about our solar panels, you dork. I guess his work prevails here, everybody. He's working and using the only printer in my home. Fabulous. I'm gonna have
Because it's
to,
yours. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah, sure.
Holly does that to me all the time. It's
Does
fine.
she? She's amazing. I
Yeah.
can't find fault with her, so I can find fault with mine though. But yeah, so
But yes, we should talk about other methods of marketing. Kickstarter is just one way of
it's just
of
one.
doing a
Mm-hmm.
launch.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of many ways of doing a book launch. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be profitable, it can be fun, it can also be stressful and
Yeah.
heartbreaking, and all of
Mhm.
the things that any of the other things can be as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's yeah, I don't like that you said it's heartbreaking, but that is true. I mean, I've seen lots of editor or not
yeah.
editors, but authors kind of like, well, first and foremost, like I've seen a lot of authors get into the business and they get like discouraged about um things not going the way they expected. And um as a person who does this myself and gets kind of like all excited about something and kind of hopes that it's going to just go without a hitch and everything's going to be smooth sailing, I've learned my lesson. It doesn't really work that way. But to be able to
Mhm.
set yourself up in for success by creating, like you said, like not lower expectations, but more realistic expectations and giving yourself time
Realistic,
to
not
hit those.
lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And give yourself time to hit those bigger goals. So, a good
Yeah.
example of this, I'm going to just throw this out there because this is a really good example of marketing and how to think about the way you approach your first book versus your series or whatever you're doing. But
Hmm.
my fantasy boys that just launched this book, The Storm Beneath the Glass, great book. Love it. Probably one of the few very few, I would say, fantasy novels that I've seen this level of work in the indie world be put into a book. They've put an
Hmm.
exceptionally tremendous amount of work into this book. And one of the things that they did, which scared the pee out of me, was when we were going through the editing process. And um, I mean, that's the monster right there. It's humongous. It's 864 pages, I believe. Um, and one of the things that those boys said to me is that they were going to do a print run. And initially, we were talking about doing a print run because the glue, you were talking, and we both were talking about how, doing a print on demand for a book that size, the glue often is kind of skimped on. And so the books kind of fall apart and you don't really get a quality, like hardcover or even paperback once you get over like 600 pages. It kind of gets a little bit sketchy.
Hmm.
And these two were like non-negotiable. Like they want to compete with
Oh yeah.
Brandon Sanderson. And so they knew if they did a print on demand also that they'd have to price their book up around like 50 or $60 just to break even on that hardcover, which is
Yeah.
terrible, right? Like that's terrible.
Oh.
So Troy and I went with them to a local printer here and got some ideas. And then that fell through because the cost stateside, still the pricing is a little bit out of control as far as I'm concerned. So they went to Canada, to Canada.
Canada,
They went to Canada and they found
our
a
northern
great,
neighbors.
yeah, our northern neighbors.
Yeah.
And they found a really great printer there that actually one of my other authors has utilized before for his coffee table books. And they got a really great deal on their print run. They did a 3,000 book print run, which again scared the padoodle out of me because that is a massive book. And I'm thinking, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, you guys are going to tank. And you know what blew my mind is when I talked to them about this, and because I knew realistically, you don't go into this business to get rich. These two looked at me and they knew from the get go that book one and book two, they were going to take a loss on. They
Hmm.
knew it. They walked into this business knowing full well their eyes were wide open. They knew that in order to build up their audience, they were going to have to tank on their sales on book one and book two. And it was going to be about book three. And they knew that.
Hmm.
Now, just keep in mind, this is an 8 book series. Like, oh my gosh. But
Yeah, but this is,
that's
yeah,
crazy.
it's
But
important.
it's
It's
important to
important.
understand how marketing plays into this and keep your eyes open and realistic so that you're not setting yourself up and you don't give up. I guess that's my number one goal is like I don't want you to
Hmm.
give up because the difference between a professional author and an amateur is a professional didn't quit. That's the difference. That's the only
Hmm.
difference. So make sure that you just don't quit. Failure doesn't happen unless you quit. So
Yeah.
if that
Well, you know what?
yeah. Hmm.
Let's next for our topic next week, let's talk about money and investment.
Okay. I can
Let's
do
talk
that.
about
I got
investment. So we'll talk about Facebook ads and Amazon ads and when you can make money on those and when you're just spending money on them.
yeah, we should do that.
And but what that is an investment and like
Yeah.
how that
And
pays off. Like how do you make
yeah.
that pay off? And how much should you invest in your author career? Because that's often a question I get is how much should you invest in the first book, or how much do you invest per book
Or
in
yeah, how
bringing a
much
book to market and marketing it?
yeah. How much does it
And
even work? Yeah, the
yeah,
people ask me how much does it even cost or should it cost? So yeah, I even have a really great
yeah,
worksheet I can give
and
away with that.
oh yeah, for sure.
So we'll do
Yeah, but
that.
let's talk about that because this is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, Facebook ads do cost you money and they can actually cost you money.
Yep.
But sometimes that's an investment that actually has a return later on. But you have to
Yeah.
understand the math behind it and how this industry works. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it's a good
Exactly.
idea.
Yeah, because it's not the same for this industry as it is for every other industry. You don't see those returns right off
Nope.
the bat, and you don't get repeat customers. We should say this too. When you sell a book to, Joe, Joe's not going to buy another book from you just because you did another ad campaign. He's already got the book. So
Hmm.
it's about
Yeah, that's
turning out
why
more
writing more
information.
books,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
writing
Yep.
more books is important.
Yep.
Writing in series, we can talk about that and
Yeah.
why that
Alternative streams of
works and why it's
income.
important.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
all
Yep.
that kind of stuff.
All that kind of stuff.
So,
So we could talk about that investment stuff next week. That would be good. I like that idea. But anyway, so yeah, so rule of thumb, we're going to put those links in the description below so you guys can, get some information and education on some of these strategies that we were talking about, specifically the Kickstarter stuff. Russell Nolte is he kind of is the guy right now, isn't he? As far as like the Kickstarter guy, like people like as far as he's wrote the book on it. Is
there's a
there
few
another?
out there, but yeah, yeah, there's another gal that has a course. Russell's book is about concepts, like the
Okay.
concepts behind
So it's like
Kickstarter, which is
macro.
really important that you understand those
Right.
things, the very macro level. There's
Hmm.
another gal that has a course, I'll try to find it real quick, that hers is much more hands-on. Like
Okay.
this is step one. You go to Kickstarter. This is what you do first. You go to Kickstarter. This is what you do next. This is what you do next. This is how you set this up as far as
Okay.
the nuts and bolts.
That's cool.
Russell's is more about the big picture of like, why do this? What does the story mean to people? Why have a video? What do your
Okay.
reward tiers mean? That
So
type of
he's
thing.
principal,
So
she's more method.
she's
So
more like right hands-on method. Go here,
gotcha.
do this, click here, that type of
Gotcha.
thing.
Yeah. So we'll make
So
sure we
yeah.
include those things for you guys. But also know that like if you ever need, like I said, that personalized, like, should I do a Kickstarter campaign kind of advice, you can always look up Troy or myself. Troy's at the plot abides, because he's the plot dude. You can find him at theplotabides.com, or you can find Stacey, me, at editsbystacey.com, which is now turning into Print to Pro. But in the meantime, you can find me at both those nice little domain typer inner things. So you just
Web houses.
type in,
Your
yeah,
web
just
house.
you should be able to just find me. Like, I'm just
Hmm.
there. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys joining us this week. If you want us to touch on something specific that you feel we should touch on, like if we're like we've hit a nerve and you're like, wait, I need a deep dive on this, like hit us up on the comments below and let us know. We would love to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. Sometimes, like I said, Troy and I just go off on these tangents because we're like, oh yeah, we should talk about that. But we'd love to know if this is hitting a chord with you. If you want to hear something different, let us know. We're happy to do that. These drop every Sunday. We're doing really good about that. We're actually doing really
Is it
good.
Sunday or Saturday?
Oh
It's
no, you're
Saturday,
right.
isn't it?
We're dropping these on Saturday. You're right. You're right. I'm dropping red ink on Sunday. So that's why I got confused. But yeah, so we're dropping
There
these
you
on
go.
Saturday. And again, you're welcome to just like and follow and subscribe and get notified, because it really helps the algorithm gods like help you and help us. So we really appreciate you guys being here. And Troy, do you have any final words before we sign off?
No, we'll maybe one of these next times we'll share once our Kickstarter goes live, we'll share that campaign link for you. And even if you don't do anything but go there and look at how we've
Yeah.
constructed the campaign, and I could potentially give you some ideas, or
Yeah.
hey, go and back it too.
Yeah, that
Find
would
some
be
pretty
fun
cool
too.
stuff
Yeah, if
there.
you like pulp
So
or noir fiction, go follow it. Yours truly helped with the cover. I'm very proud of it. It's kind of fun. Um,
yes,
but anyway, so you guys have an amazing week and keep writing, make your mark. We'll see you guys next week.
we'll see you next time. All
All
right, thanks
right.
everybody.
Bye.